With EWC coming to a close, I wanted to go over the entire tournament and recap how the Thieves did. The Thieves actually came out kind of slow, but they bounced back pretty quick and were able to end up finishing second place at EWC against Atlanta FaZe. Now, this is something that I'm sure most Thieves fans were not anticipating, but the Thieves really sparked a run kind of like at the end of the year. Obviously, we saw at Champs they ended up getting top 4, and now they come into EWC and they take top 2. And they honestly battled against FaZe the whole time. Obviously, we're going to get into that match later down the line, but I wanted to kind of bring that up if you hadn't seen yet already. But yeah, let's dive into some of the matches, and we'll kind of break down how the Thieves got to that grand final before they ended up falling to Atlanta FaZe. The very first match the Thieves had was up against Lore Gaming. Now, the way this tournament was set up was there were pools that every team was a part of, and the Thieves were in the pool with FaZe, Lore, and Falcons. Now, this was kind of good for the Thieves, knowing that they had 2 amateur teams in their pool play, and I'm pretty sure they were the only pool to have that. Now, the thing with this pool play is it was a little different than what most pool play typically is. This pool play ended up being more of like a bracket going into the bracket play. And you'll kind of see what I mean as we go through some of these series. But the Thieves basically had to win 2 games before they lost 2 games. If they lost 2 games, they would be out. If they won 2 games, they would still be in. So it was a little different than how you would normally see pool play. But like I said, they started off against Lore Gaming here. And, we started off pretty slow. It wasn't the best start that we've seen from the Thieves. Obviously, the Thieves have kind of been a team that starts off slow sometimes. I feel like that's kind of just been a historic thing for them. But the Thieves were able to still win their first map. They started off down pretty early. As you can see, 65 points in the first 2 hills for Lore Gaming before the Thieves kind of started to slowly make that comeback. And, from there, it was a little back and forth up until about the 7th hard point. As you can see, that's when the Thieves started to pull away. And then at that point, I think the guns were hot. They kind of got that momentum, and they just kept pushing through. The other thing on top of that was Ghosty actually started off really, really slow. He started off 0-8 going through the first, I want to say, 2 to 3 hard points. And that's obviously something we don't see from Ghosty very often. But he did end up finishing only -4, so he did have a little bit of a bounce back, which I do think helped this team kind of, push the pace towards the end of the map. And, Nasty, so we'll get into this more too, but Nasty and Joe Deceives, I mean, they had a great event overall, but you see here, Joe was +16, a 1.89 KD, 34 and 18. I mean, Joe wanted to win this map more than he wanted to breathe, it seems. Like, the guy was frying. He had almost 6K damage. And as we said, this was kind of a tournament thing, and we'll see more of those types of stats. But this was just kind of like the start to everything. It helped the Thieves kind of get the ball rolling. And, that takes us into the high-rise search and destroy, which really wasn't great. I mean, you see here, we lost 6-1. For some reason, the Thieves search and destroy from champs to now has not been great. So going into this match, I was kind of hoping that because it was a challengers team, that maybe we would be able to kind of fix the search and destroy problems. And that really didn't happen. Everybody on the Thieves was negative, whereas 2Real was the only one on Lore's side that was negative with a -2. Yuli had an insane map going 11-2, and you see, I mean, Lore just went on a crazy win streak. They won the first 5 rounds. Thieves were only able to take 1 before Lore ended up closing out the map. Really not too much to talk about this. We just didn't look good. There really wasn't even much chatter on the side of like the analysts and things like that during the series. So there's really not much to cover other than we just didn't look very good. Like, everything looked really discombobulated, and Lore was able to take advantage of that, especially with them being a really good search team. Yes, they're a challengers team, but they were really good at search, and they proved it during this match. But up next, the Thieves had a high-rise control where we were able to bounce back, and everybody was kind of frying at this point. We ended up winning that one 3-0, and I think that was a really big confidence boost for this team. Like I said, yes, it was a challengers team, but obviously losing 6-1 in a search and destroy before that is not ideal. But they kind of just wiped it from their brains, came into this high rise, and were able to lock in. And you see that Kremp was +6, Joe was +6. Like I said, everybody positive on the side of Thieves, and Lore was never really in this one. It was one of those where the Thieves just kind of took advantage, and defensively, they did not let Lore out of their spawn. That was a big thing. You see, Too Real only had 9 kills. Arcides and Paul X 10 and 11 kills on their side of things. Yuli was the only one to break positive, going 16 and 13. So really, the Thieves kind of just had their teamwork on point and were really making it hard for Lore to get out of their spawn. Defensively, and then offensively, the Thieves were still able to just take control, which led us to this Vista hard point where the Thieves were finally able to close out the series. And this one, I want to say, started off a little slow for the Thieves again. Yes, we did still end up kind of picking it up, and then we stayed ahead the whole time, but this one was a lot more back and forth than the first hard point was. As we saw from the breakdown of the first hard point, the Thieves started off a little slow, but then they kind of were able to pull away towards the end. This one, it was like Lore was just keeping pace basically the whole time up until the very end. That's why you can see the final score was 250 to 238. Lore was actually in a position on the last hard point to win, but Thieves came in and had a really big break, going through mid to getting to P2 in order to close out the map. And Joe had a little bit of a slower one towards the start of it, I would say. I think he picked it up towards the end. He went -2, Ghosty -4. Not terrible by them by any means. Definitely a big difference from what we saw from him in the first hard point, though. And then Kremp was +4 and Nasty was +4 as well. Both of them dropping 30 bombs to make sure we closed out this series and moved on to our next matchup, which was against FaZe. Now, this was our first matchup against FaZe during this tournament, and it did not go very well for us. Our closest match was probably the Vista hardpoint. As you can see, the Thieves ended up losing that one 205 to 250. And even in this one, I mean, aBeZy just had an absolute masterclass. You see he dropped 40 kills with a 1.74 KD. And it's really hard to beat them when you have aBeZy doing things like that. Especially when the Thieves were still kind of on their slower pace, I would say. I do think that's like the biggest reason they got 3-0'd here against FaZe. As you can see, the Thieves never really had a lead. The closest point they had to having a lead was the second hard point, and after that, it was basically FaZe the rest of the way. They did keep it interesting, though, keeping it fairly close throughout. It was just, like I said, aBeZy has 40 kills. It's just a little too much to overcome. And everybody on the side of Thieves was negative. It's just going to be really hard to win a map like that. And I think at that point, knowing that, too, our search in the first series was not ideal, going into 6-star, the Thieves just got smacked around again. We had a 0-6 6-star, which is not good, especially after you lose the first map. Ghosty with a donut, he went 0-6, almost had the James Bond stat line. And, I got to make the joke about this because this happens way too much with the Thieves, I feel like. Octane was a guy who had donuts a couple times on the Thieves, and ever since he's retired, we've had somebody on the Thieves getting donuts almost every search and destroy. They may not finish with a donut, but they will play most of the map with a donut before we end up finishing the map. And it seems like it happens at the most inopportune times. I don't know what kind of hex or curse Octane left for this team, but he needs to fix it. I don't know what he can do to fix it, but Octane, if you're watching this, please help us take this curse away. We really need it to go somewhere else. because it is not fun to see our team dropping a donut going deep into a search and destroy. But yeah, again, like I said, same with kind of like the lore matchup on search and destroy. There's not too much to talk about. We just straight up got spanked. They looked discombobulated, as I said earlier. Not a lot of teamwork going into it, and FaZe just outperformed them. And that's basically that. Abizi was 8-1, with an 8.0 KD. Like, that's insane. He was just on a heater this series, and that brought us into the invasion control, which I thought we had a decent chance at, but as I said before, similar with the 6-star, how going into that map, we had already lost the map before that. Now you're down 2-0 against one of the best teams in the game. Not going to be very easy to end up kind of trying to reverse sweep that one. And realistically, seeing Subbase was up next, I was not too thrilled about that either. So, just kind of a little gloomy for this one. The only upside was that it was pool play, and even if they lost this match, because they won their first one, they had another opportunity to kind of make it back and still make it into bracket. Again, this was another map where, yes, the Thieves were able to take one, and if I'm not mistaken, they had a few moments where they probably could have closed out another round win and maybe pushed it to a round 5, but they weren't able to do that. And here you have Simp, the only one being negative for FaZe with a -6 at 0.75 KD. And Ghosty had a little bit of a better map for this one. He was a 1.1, and Nasty as well with breaking even, going 21-21. Joe Deceives had a bit of a slower one this time, and Kremp was only -2, which is really not that bad. But yeah, we weren't able to close this one out. I think that was too much of a lead for the Thieves to try and overcome. But that brings us to our next match, which was against Lore Gaming again. And this time, the Thieves took it in a little bit more of a dominant fashion. Obviously, they won the first one 3-1, but this time it was like, hey, we really gotta lock in. We want to try and get back into the swing of things, and I think that's kind of what they did in this series. We played them on Rio Hardpoint again for the first map. Thieves ended up taking that one 250-112, and Ghosty had a better performance this time. Joe Deceives had a great map as well, and I think that was a very good catalyst for this map. From this flow chart, you can see how the Thieves, started off pretty close after the first hill, but once we moved on past that, the Thieves were just kind of like in flow, it seemed like, and their teamwork looked a lot better than what it had maybe in the first matchup against Lore. That's why, you can see them kind of skyrocket towards the end, making it a little more difficult for Lore to stay into this one. It also probably helps that Yuli had a little bit of a slower series, or a slower map, I should say. In the first series against us, he performed really well, but this one he was -12 in the hard point, and he was kind of like their main slayer before in the other series, so that was definitely a big help as well. But I think it was a good momentum boost for the Thieves to get that first map going into the Invasion Search. And on top of that, I think Invasion was just a different look for the Thieves. This was a map they had not played yet, and despite their search flaws and a lot of their shortcomings, they ended up looking a little better here, where Nasty really willed them to get this win. As you can see, it was a 6-5 victory, so they kept it close the entire time, but Nasty went 11-4 with a 2.75 KD to help make sure the Thieves got over the search and destroy hump. And I honestly think that was a huge mental block for them, because you'll see coming into these next series that search and destroy might have helped kind of kickstart a little bit of their search and destroy momentum. Paul X was the only one to be on the positive side of things for Lore Gaming, and you see here the Thieves actually started this one off fairly slow as well. They won the first round, but then go on to lose the next 4 before they win 2 in a row. Then Lore takes another one, and then the Thieves rattle off 3 in a row to close out the search. They had some really big plays to help keep their ice and end up closing out this map. And I think at that point it was too much for Lore to kind of overcome going into the high rise, especially knowing that the Thieves had played them on this map already where they 3-0'd them before. The crazy thing, though, is Lore did end up battling in this one. It ended up being a 3-2, whereas the first one, like I said, was a 3-0. Ghosty had a little bit of a slower one this one, 23 and 27, something you don't typically see from him, having multiple kind of like negative maps. But Joe Thieves, again, he pulled out a crazy map to try and help get us this win, going 40 and 24 with a 1.67 KD. You know, like I said, Joe had a great event, you know, really good series against them. And I'm sure at the time, a lot of people maybe just thought, well, you know, they're a challengers team. Maybe that's why he's popping off. But, you know, we'll see later down the line that was not the case. Nasty as well, going 27 and 20, helping us close out this series against Lore, kicking them out of the tournament and giving us I believe it was the last spot in bracket play. And, you know, of course, we had to face off against them at some point. It was the Toronto Ultra. After facing off against them at Champs, it almost felt like we were going to have to face off against them again. And this is something I had brought up before, that, you know, the Thieves inevitably are going to have to play a top 4 team if you're going to try and win a championship. That's just the way it is. But the fact that we got faced up against Toronto Ultra yet again was kind of crazy. Toronto ended up... Who did they... Or no, it was New York. New York lost to Seattle, which is kind of what made the bracket be what it was. But I guess we'll get more into that. But yeah, this series was very close. The Thieves battled the entire time. And this is what I mean by the search and destroy. I felt like the search against Lore was the kickstart to their search and destroy improvements, because you see here the Thieves took both of the searches. They lost the first hard point, and they kind of lost in a pretty handed fashion. They lost it 250 to 115. You know, not really what I expected from the Thieves, but, you know, you had Insight and Kleenex both absolutely firing. Envoy not far behind them either. All of them with a 1.4 plus KD. And then Scrap obviously was, you know, even doing his thing. Kremp had a bit of a slower map. This one going -12 with a 0.56 KD. Ghosty started off slow yet again. Joe Thieves didn't have a great one. Nasty was probably their best one overall, and they were all negative. You see they kept it close towards the start, but after that, again, Ultra kind of just hit that flow state, and they were able to just take advantage for the rest of the way. Now, I wasn't sure how to feel about the Vista map pick, because I felt like the Thieves had already shown that Rio and 6-Star are probably two of, if not their best hardpoint maps. So when we saw Vista as the map 1, it was a little surprising to me. And, you know, based on how we had seen their search and destroy going leading into this series, I was not too thrilled knowing we just lost the first map. You know, it was a little nerve-wracking, especially knowing that Rio search was the search we lost to Ultra twice at Champs. So, you know, a little bit concerning going into that search and destroy, but the Thieves clutched up. I mean, they iced up, and they were able to pull out this one 5-6, and I believe they were down. All right, they kept it tied, and then they went on to win the next 3, and then Ultra won, and then the Thieves finished it off. Don't know why it says 7-4. That's not possible, but the Thieves ended up beating them in the opening duels battle, which I think helped them a lot, because before they were getting opening duels and they weren't converting. But I think this time they did a little bit of a better job trying to make sure you get the opening duels and then play smart to make sure you close out those rounds, because that is not how it was going at the start of the tournament. So they ended up, you know, bringing that ice, taking it, you know, taking the search in a very close fashion, very nerve-wracking, that's for sure. I was anxious the entire time. And that brought us into high-rise control, which is a map that Toronto Ultra is pretty good at. And they ended up taking that one pretty handedly as well, 3-1. They stole away a offensive round that, you know, really shouldn't have happened. There were 2 times where the Thieves were, I want to say, 10 seconds or less away from winning their defensive round before Ultra would cap a point and extend the time. And the one time they only capped the point and the Thieves were still able to close out the round. But the second time, the Thieves had, again, about 10 seconds or less where Ultra was able to get onto the point. Thieves could not break back in. That led Ultra to capping the point and then going to the next one where they ended up capping that one as well, giving them the offensive round, which, like I said, in my head, that shouldn't happen. You know, we can't really let those things slide. And I think that was kind of the demise of the Thieves on this high-rise control. And obviously Scrap was absolutely shooting with a 1.78 KD, dropping a 32 bomb. And, you know, Insight was the only one negative for them. Everybody else was kind of keeping pace. And the Thieves were just kind of on the receiving end of that. Joe Deceives had not so good of a map on this one, -10. Kremp was -9. Ghosty was pretty much even. And then Nasty with a +2. You know, as you can see, the Thieves won that first defensive round, and then Toronto won their defensive round, and then after that was when they had that crazy kind of like comeback on the offensive round for them before they were able to close it out on defense again. Obviously, this is a very defensive heavy sided map, and you know, once you give up that offense, you have to be perfect on your offense to try and tie up the series, and the Thieves were not able to do that. So that's when things started getting really, really nerve-wracking for me, seeing we had Sub Base up next. Sub Base has been a map that I personally have kind of been open about, that I don't like when the Thieves play it, because every time they've played it in matches, they just haven't looked great on it. And this was actually something I had talked to Joe about in the interview with him, and he said he understands how people see it that way, but that they trust their practices, and in practice they are really good at sub base. So, you know, it just had to put the faith in the team, and they showed up, and they showed up. They did a great job. They won this one 250 to 201. Yes, it was close the whole time, but everybody seemed to be making plays. Ghosty was the only one negative. Again, something that's pretty shocking. Like, typically what was happening before early in the year was Ghosty would be the guy that was positive and everybody else would be negative or like close behind. And this was, you know, on the other side of it. We had everybody positive besides Ghosty. And to me, that just shows kind of how much this team has really developed and improved, because they went from, you know, Ghosty was kind of the main guy, the guy who was getting a lot of the kills, and everybody else was kind of just filling in where they needed to. And now it's at a point where everybody can kind of do what they do best, and I feel like it almost takes some pressure off of Ghosty. And that's why you see Ghosty was -4, but yet the Thieves were still able to win this one in, I wouldn't say super convincing fashion, but they made some big plays to, you know, kind of keep them in this game. And I mean, this is a pretty hectic graph here. You see the Thieves started off crazy hot, you know, winning the first 3 hard points basically, and then Ultra was able to kind of fight back into it. I want to say the Thieves ended up getting a streak at some point. That streak usage helped them get back up to kind of tie it up with them again, and then the Thieves were able to make a huge play where they were, you know, able to chain multiple hills, closing out this one 250 to 201. And that, I think, was kind of the momentum for the Thieves. It brought some life back into the team. I feel like now you have the series tied up 2-2. You had won the first Search and Destroy, and now you're going into another one. And this is a map of Karachi that both of these teams have not played that much. I'm not sure how this one got put in. Maybe it was just both teams banned, you know, whatever they felt was the more prominent map for each other, and Karachi just ended up being the last one. But I was kind of surprised to see it. And with the new smoke patch, the Thieves, well, every team really, was not able to use a smoke unless it was on Invasion Search. And Karachi is a map that the search actually, or the smoke, my bad, plays a big part in the searches. And so I was a little curious to see how that would play out. Because I did almost feel like it it could be in favor of the Thieves. And I think in some regard it might have been, but it was very close the whole time, very back and forth up until we got to the 6th round here, where the Thieves were able to rattle off a couple in a row. And Ghosty started off pretty slow. Joe started off slow as well. He finished only 2-7. But Ghosty started off slow too. I think at one point he had another donut, and I remember looking at the map and I was like, oh man, he's got another donut. Like, what's going on? That round he ends up getting 3 kills. The next round after that he ends up getting his streak, and that's where kind of momentum shifted fully into the Thieves' favor. Kremp had an insane map though. Kremp did everything he could to make sure that the Thieves were going to move on to the next part of the tournament by dropping 15 kills in the Search and Destroy. He went 15-5, 3.0 KD, and Nasty had a solid map as well with a 1.4 KD, 7-5. So, they were doing what they could to make sure they were going to move on here, and, everybody kind of played their part. Yes, Joe had a little bit of a slower map, but he did have some moments where, maybe he didn't get the kill, but he had impactful information that he was able to find to help the Thieves kind of win those rounds. And, it was just a great sight to see the Thieves end up taking that map and taking that series, where they were able to move on and face off against the Vancouver Surge. This one was kind of an interesting one because Cloud9 was in the same pool as Vancouver, and Cloud9 ended up losing to them, which is what put them in the top part of the bracket, where Cloud9 had to face off. It was going to be against Optic or FaZe if they were able to move on past Optic. So Vancouver dropped down to the lower bracket, where it was the Thieves who were, kind of the next top team, you could say, after the Thieves beat Ultra. So this was a very interesting semifinal match for both teams to be in, I feel like, when you're looking at kind of like the big picture of everything. But there were some people who were thinking that the Surge could take this one, and based off of them beating Cloud9, that was a possibility. But the thing is, the Thieves, I think they found their rhythm at this point. As you can see, the Thieves took this one 3-0, their most dominant series they probably had all weekend. And it was against a solid Vancouver team. Like, Vancouver played pretty well against the other teams that they faced, but the Thieves came out hot in the map 1, and 6-star, again, we talked about it, that was probably their bread and butter hard point. The only one you could argue to be better would be Rio. Those were kind of their two top maps, and so getting 6-star right off the bat, Thieves started off probably more hot than what we have seen them. And, Ghosty had a pretty solid map, this one going +9, 30 kills. Nasty was not far behind him with 28. And Joe and Kremp were negative, but not by much. So the team was really playing off of each other really well. The only one positive for Surge was 0-4. And really, like, the Thieves' entire match, or like this entire map, was very consistent on a lot of like their teamwork. There were a couple moments here and there where, like 0-4 specifically, I think that's one of the biggest reasons he ended up going positive, was 0-4 popped a couple like 2 pieces or 3 pieces that, probably shouldn't have happened, but the Thieves were still able to kind of just wipe that aside and take control of this game. And I think that's what, kind of helped them stay ahead. They played great. They had a lot more trades than what we had seen, and they were just looking solid. They looked like a pretty well-oiled machine, and that really helped them get through this one and finish it off 250-184. The next match we had, or the next map, I should say, we had High Rise Search and Destroy, where the Thieves, again, they were just kind of on a mission at that point, and based off of how they had played in their other searches, I think they kind of found their swagger, and they were able to take this one 6-3, and Ghosty was the only one with a negative map. Again, like I said, he had a little bit of a slow tournament, which is really unfortunate based on the timing, but the team played really well overall, and you can see that Nasty was 10-3, Kremp 10-5. Like, these guys really wanted it, and they proved it, man. They came out and they played really, really well. dominating in the kill department and dominating in the opening duel department with 7-2. I mean, it's going to be hard if you're Seattle to overcome a 7-2 opening duel battle. Like that's really hard to kind of bounce back from that. You have 7 rounds where you're starting off 3v4 basically. So that was really big for the Thieves. They did a great job of getting those first bloods, and then, like I said earlier, kind of playing their lives, playing their numbers at that point, never really letting Surge get back into it. And then that takes us to the map 3 Karachi, where the Thieves had some crazy moments in this one. Like you can see from the breakdown that it was very back and forth, but there were some moments that the Thieves should not have won the rounds they did. They won, I want to say it was 2 offenses that did not look like they were winnable offenses for them, but it was like somebody would just kind of like slip the net, and once they slipped the net, they were able to get on the A point or the B point, basically the P2 on Karachi. They were able to slide in and kind of force Vancouver to look away and fall back and try and kill whoever was on that point, and that allowed the rest of the map to open up for the Thieves, who were fresh off of spawn. And there were 2 instances where they had less than 10 lives left to Surge's around 10 lives on defense. So typically at that point you would say Surge is in the favorable position, but the Thieves were able to, like I said, slip the net, get in behind them, and then they were able to just wipe on all their kills. And it was really, really insane to see. And I don't know how they were able to kind of do all that. I don't know how they slipped the net, but we'll take it. It ended up closing out the series for them, and that guaranteed the Thieves a ticket to the grand finals, where they were guaranteed a cash prize of $320,000, if I'm not mistaken. At that point, we knew we have to take on the Juggernaut team again. We had to take on Atlanta FaZe. And this one being the grand finals, it was a best of 7. And, like looking at this map pool, again, I was a little unsure on how this would go. You see, we started off with a sub base, and yes, we did win a sub base earlier in the tournament. But again, we had seen FaZe play on this earlier, and they actually played pretty well on it, so that was a little concerning to me. We had Invasion Search, which I felt like was a decent opportunity for us, especially knowing that our searches had started looking better. High-Rise Control, which I felt the Thieves could take depending on how they showed up. And then Karachi Hardpoint, which is one that the Thieves rarely ever play. And then we had Rio Search and Invasion Control, and then High-Rise Search, which Rio Search I felt like was going to be a decent look for us because we started to look a little better on our searches, and Rio was one of those maps that the Thieves were really good at in the past. The Invasion Control I felt like was kind of a toss-up. I feel like that's what it's been for the last couple matches that the Thieves have played Invasion on. And then High-Rise Search I felt like we would be pretty solid at. I don't know much about like FaZe's search on High-Rise, but I felt like the Thieves could have been a little more favored on that High-Rise Search and Destroy if they were able to make it to that map 7. Unfortunately, the Thieves were not able to make it to that map 7, but they started off playing FaZe pretty well. Despite 3 of the Thieves players being negative, we only lost by about 50 points to, like I said, FaZe, a team who has been really, really good. This trio of Abizi, Celium, and Simp has been absolutely insane since the inception of the CDL era. And, obviously with the pickup of Draza, they're just going to get better. And you can see here that the Thieves battled the entire time. They kept it super, super close. And it wasn't until towards the end where FaZe was able to kind of pull away. And that really was on the back of Celium, because he went 37-18 with a 2.06 KD. And when he shoot like that, it's not very easy to beat them. Abizi was kind of doing everything he needed to do to help win out the trades and things like that. It honestly just looked like it was one of those situations where FaZe's trades were on point, and we'll see that same kind of trend in the Karachi Hardpoint as well. But the Thieves ended up losing that map 1, which obviously adds a little bit of pressure going into the next match, or the next map, which was the Invasion Search and Destroy. But good thing here is the Thieves actually sparked a little bit of some fire here. And you see it was basically 2-2-2 the whole way through up until the 10th round. 10th round, where the Thieves were then able to chain 2 wins together again to close out the map. And this one was actually a solid map for Ghosty, going 10-7 with a 1.43. Joe Deceives was the only one negative, going 4-7, which I feel like in Search and Destroy really isn't terrible. You had Crimp and Nasty both going 8-7, and a lot of damage on the side of the Thieves when it comes to Ghosty and Nasty together. On the side of FaZe, Simp was the only one positive with a +2, going 9-7, and it was just, as you could see from the breakdown, it was just very back and forth. We barely edged them out on the kill department, and they were ahead on the opening duels only by 1. So it was very back and forth. I want to say there were moments on both sides of things where either we would get the first blood, they would get the first blood, and the opposite team would end up winning the round. So huge ice from the Thieves to be able to be down in that round 10 and come back and win the next 2, or round 9, and win the next 2 to take it to a round 11. And they iced up in that last round. There was a huge moment from Kremp where Celium was just playing back in their spawn. FaZe was on offense, and really Celium was in a spot that you would think would be completely unreadable, but Kremp, being the S&D mastermind that he is, I don't know if there was a lot of VOD review that kind of told Kremp, hey, maybe we should check this, but he pushed through, found a good timing, and ended up killing Celium. And that kind of opened up the floodgates for the Thieves to be able to go back and take that bomb site, where the Thieves were able to win out their trades the rest of the way, and they ended up winning that round, which I think was a huge catalyst to help them win that final round. Just impressive plays out of Kremp. Like I said, something that it seems like he must have known exactly what FaZe was doing based off of VOD and all that review. The map 3, though, we have the high-rise control, and this one was a spicy one. This one was very tense. It was back and forth, as you can see, with it being 3-2. FaZe ended up winning the first round, Thieves the second, FaZe the third, and at that point, the Thieves had to win an offensive round, and they were yet to do so. So, very nerve-wracking knowing that, hey, we had some moments that we probably should have closed them out. They had some similar situations as they did with the Ultra Series, where they kind of just let FaZe get on the point, and the Thieves got some ticks and were able to extend that round, which I think helped lead FaZe to getting defense in the final round, which typically on high rise is not what you want to see if you're the team who gets offense. But what seemed to be the big thing that I noticed was it was like every time the Thieves got on a point, they just never had trophies at the right time. And so FaZe was just able to lob in a bunch of nades and a bunch of stuns, and that ended up basically, wiping the Thieves off of the point, and then FaZe were able to take map control, which they then would spawn trap you basically for the rest of the round. Now, the crazy thing about it was, in that last round, the Thieves were able to win the opening break, and I think that kind of helped them get that momentum they needed, and it pushed them to win that final offense. And Joe Deceives had some insane moments on that map. He was +7 with a 1.28 KD, dropping 32 kills. Kremp had 33, and obviously both of them had some big moments, but I mean, Joe, he was just, look at that, 7,000 damage. He has 7,000 damage with 32 kills, whereas Kremp has 33 with just under 6,000 damage. Joe was dealing all sorts of damage to everybody, helping everybody else kind of get some kills, and was still getting some on his own. He ended up getting a big streak that really helped the Thieves, and I feel like he was the guy who kind of iced up on that map to help them get that offensive round, which ended up leading them to that 3-2 victory going into the Karachi hardpoint. Now, similar to some of the other maps where the Thieves kind of just got, smoked, this was one of those where there's really not too much to talk about. They started off okay, but, for the most part, it was all on the side of FaZe. FaZe was just baiting out a lot of really smart trades and kind of like forcing Thieves to almost overcommit to challenges, which was leading FaZe to getting those switches, basically. And, you have Celium and Draza going +9. And, I mean, really, outside of them, like, 17 and 16 for Abizi and Simp is really not too much. But, the team was just playing super, super well together. They meshed so well that it was just too much for the Thieves to kind of overcome. You can see through the first 4 hills, they kept it pretty close, and then after that was when FaZe started to pull away. They got into their momentum, and at that point there was really no coming back. So there's really not too much going on with this map specifically, but it was really unfortunate to see them lose that one. But it felt okay knowing that we have Rio Search and Destroy up next, until it didn't. Until we ended up losing in that one 6-1. We struggled in this one as well, where there were just a couple moments here and there that it felt like the Thieves had the opportunity to win around, and they just kind of threw it away. There were several times where they had the opening duels. As you can see here, they had 4 opening duels compared to FaZe's 3, but majority of those the Thieves did not convert on. And I think that was really kind of like what stuck the dagger in their heart there. There were just too many situations where they had the advantage when it came to man advantage, I guess, and they weren't able to convert. And FaZe, again, they just looked like a really, really solid team. And once FaZe kind of gets on that wavelength, it's really hard to get them out. And you see here Celium with a 2.3 KD going 7-3, and Draza with a 1.5, 6 and 4, Simp 1.67, Abizi 1.6. Just they had everything going at that point. There really wasn't much coming back for the Thieves. And then in this last map here, we have the Invasion Control, where the Thieves did so many good things to try and take us to a Game 7. They really worked very hard to get to that Game 7. And it just kind of fell flat at the end. They started off pretty good. They had defense on the second round, so FaZe started off with defense. They were able to win that one, which, again, Invasion is typically the defensive side map, so it made sense that FaZe started off on defense, or started off winning on defense. But the thing with the Thieves was they ended up getting, I want to say it was 5 ticks to start off the offense. So there was a chance that the Thieves almost won the first round. But, getting 5 ticks is a huge start to this map because, most control maps are kind of based on ticks, but this map specifically is very tick heavy because it's hard to win on offense. So when the Thieves were able to get 5 ticks, that was kind of like a win within the game, or a game within the game win. So that was a really good start. Then they go on to win the next round where they gave up, I want to say 4 ticks. So they were still in advantage of ticks at that point, and they won the round. Going into the last offensive round for them, they ended up keeping that one close as well, getting, I want to say, at least 3 ticks, which put them ahead. I don't know if they ended up getting a tick on the A side of things, but I'm pretty sure they cleared out the B side and then, ended up falling before they went into their defensive round, and they basically got FaZe in the chokehold. They got them in the spawn trap, and I felt like at that point, hey, we have a really, really good opportunity to close out this map and take us to a Game 7, which would have been huge. But things didn't quite work out that way. FaZe were able to lock in on their offensive side of things, and it seems that it was just the Invasion game, or round 5 defense curse. I feel like that's a thing that the Thieves had all year, where They would play Invasion super, super close. They would get to the round 5. They would have defense. And then that was the only time a team would win on offense. Like, it happened all year. And of course, that's kind of how the Thieves end up closing it out. Nobody was positive on the side of Thieves, but Ghosty went 30 and 31. So, he was dealing a lot of damage. Joe was 29 and 29. He was dealing a lot of damage. They were all negative, but not in a super bad light. Everybody was -3 or better. So they really played well as a team. It just kind of came down to a small moment at the end on that final round where FaZe was able to kind of, slip through on the cross, and the Thieves just couldn't break back in. And at that point, they were able to stack, and they ended up taking the 8 point. But, the Thieves looked really good throughout this entire event. Obviously, as we said, Ghosty maybe he didn't have the best event, but the fact that he didn't have a great event and the Thieves were still able to get second at the second biggest tournament in the year is really impressive, because I feel like, as I said earlier, he was kind of the guy that kept that momentum for them in a lot of their series. And seeing that he did struggle a little bit this tournament and the Thieves were still able to do what they did, I feel like at this point, if the Thieves end up keeping the roster that they have now, that there is a chance that next year this team could be really damn good. I don't know how things are going to look when it comes to that side of things. I don't really want to dive into that right now. I kind of just want to settle in with how this year went, because I think the Thieves deserve a lot of credit. Yes, they didn't end up winning this tournament. They didn't end up winning a tournament this year, but the Thieves, in a sense, were kind of like a Moneyball team, you could say, starting off this year. It was a rebuild year for them, and they had multiple roster changes. Still not as many as Cold War, thank goodness, but they had some roster changes. Joe was in the starting roster before he dropped down into Challengers, then was brought back up, and ever since, the Thieves have looked really good. And Joe Deceives specifically has looked really good. He had a great Champs run. He had a great EWC run. I just feel like this team has a lot of potential. Joe's only 19 years old. Ghosty, I want to say, is only 21. I think Kremp is 21 or 22. And Nasty might be 23, maybe. So the whole team is really young. And they played very well together. And they almost took one of the best teams in the game to a game 5 or a game 7. And I just feel like they deserve a lot of recognition for that. Like I said, yes, it's not a win, it's not a championship, but from where they started in the year to where they finished, I feel like they deserve all the props in the world. And I mean, shoot, they finished with a $320,000 price tag, so very, very big from them. Very proud of this team. Obviously, I've had the pleasure of getting to do some interviews with the team, and it's awesome to get to see them kind of form to where they are now. Especially knowing that there were some fans who were calling out basically everybody on the team, saying that they needed to be changed or they needed to be swapped for somebody else. And I'm just very happy for the team that we have now to be able to kind of push through a lot of the muck that they had at the start of this year to get to the point where they did now. And I think if we end up keeping this team together, I think it'll actually be a really good team next year. I think Joe has so much potential. Obviously, we've seen what Ghosty can be, and I think Nasty has been playing very well off of the rest of the guys on this team, and I think Kremp is slowly starting to find his form as well. He's obviously been great in the Search and Destroys. I think without Kremp, our Search and Destroys would not look the way they have, especially these last couple series that they played where they kind of started to rally back into it. So, ton of props to this team. And, all I can say is they had a fantastic year, and I hope everybody gives them their flowers because those boys deserve it. That's going to do it for the video, though. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, please hit that like and subscribe button, and go down in the comments and congratulate the boys. I know this is not the Thieves actual page, but you know what? Go give them their flowers in the comment section. I think they would love that. I would love that. But yeah, that's going to do it for the video today. And, you know, if you aren't following already, please go ahead and check out the Thieves Talk Twitter page. I give all the live updates over there. And, you know, with us going into probably the Roster Mania season, we'll see what kind of goes on. And I will be having updates on there for that. We may end up doing some videos down the line if there's some big announcements and things like that. But if you want to stay up to date on that stuff, following Thieves Talk on Twitter is probably the best way to do so. But yeah, that's going to do it today. Like I said, like and subscribe, and we will see you all in the next one. Peace.